All lifting is ego lifting. The second that you pick up a barbell, or in the case of the bodybuilding cultists, a machine or a cable, you are an ego lifter. Heavy lifting, light lifting, strength training, bodybuilding, doesn't matter, man. It's all the same. It's all to assuage the ego. What's up, guys? Enkiri here, and I got a fun one for you guys today, so let's see how many feathers we can get rustled up. Now, as many of you know, I am a strength and athleticism enthusiast. I just enjoy lifting heavy things, right? I've competed in several powerlifting competitions, and I just like to lift heavy stuff. It's fun to me, and I use the benefits of strength training as an adjunct to my non-weight room related fitness goals, which generally revolve around enhancing basic components of athleticism. So things like my running speed, my ability to jump high and far, etc., etc. Naturally, this means that in addition to my heavy lifting, I also like to include plenty of ballistic and explosive movements in my training as well. So that's where you're going to see things like Olympic lift variations, push presses, high pulls, heavy swings, and other things of that nature. Momentum-based exercises that revolve around moving heavy implements in an explosive fashion. And with that, when you consider both the heavy lifting that I do, along with the explosive lifting that I do, and all the footage that I've posted onto the internet over the years, I have, along with that footage, received a plethora of ignorant comments from uninformed people over the years, more so than you can probably possibly even fathom, often calling me, little old me, an ego lifter. So things like, oh, this idiot doesn't know what he's doing. He's just using momentum to lift weights that he can't control. Or he's destroying his joints just so he can boost his ego by lifting weights that he shouldn't be lifting. Blah, 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 blah. And this sort of falls in line with the general sentiment, right? These comments that I've gotten over the years that I get all the time falls in line with the general sentiment that I've seen on the internet, especially in recent years, with social media blowing everything up, where people love to classify people who lift heavy shit as ego lifters, just kind of by default, right? Really as a blanket assertion. Never mind the goal that's being chased, never mind the purpose of the movement that's being used, never mind the level of mastery that may or may not be present, and never mind every other pertinent factor that's probably involved in that equation that they're not factoring in. If somebody's lifting something heavy, if they're trying hard and they're straining, maybe if they're grinding a little bit, or maybe even, gasp, suffering a little bit of form breakdown in the process, then that guy's just a big dumb ego lifter who would make better progress lifting lighter weights. And I find these ideas funny because almost invariably, they almost always come from people who have drank the enhanced bodybuilding Kool-Aid. And even funnier, it's usually novice to intermediate level lifters who've really just kind of been sucked in by the likes of the big, swole, roided up guys that they idolize on social media. Now those guys, the big swole guys, are typically dudes who've been both lifting and drinking the juicy juice for the last 2 decades at a minimum. And those guys, for a plethora of reasons, have potentially graduated beyond the need to lift anything heavy in order to maintain the size that they have acquired. And along with that, they've often forgotten the basic tenets of natural lifting. Now, those guys get a lot of attention on social media because of how they look, but the road that they currently find themselves on is probably not the road that you are on. Those guys are already at their destination, right? They're cruising along at 20 miles per hour on the back roads, and they're telling you that everything is fucking fantastic over here. Come on down and join me. Never minding the fact that you are still on the other side of the country, and what you need to do is hop on the highway and crank it up to 80 for the foreseeable future, just so you can even make it to those same back roads at all. And I'm getting a little bit off track here, but bear with me, I promise we'll get to the point. Basically, what I see is often a bunch of brainwashed novice and intermediates who have drank that enhanced bodybuilding Kool-Aid to such an extent that now anytime they see anybody lifting anything even remotely impressive or remotely heavy, they automatically classify it as ego lifting, really as a coping mechanism. Oh, his arms are small, who cares how strong he is? I know this guy who's way bigger than you, but he doesn't need to ego lift to make himself feel better. But the funny part is, in reality, all lifting is ego lifting. The second that you pick up a fucking barbell, or in the case of these bodybuilding cultists, a machine or a cable, you are an ego lifter. Heavy lifting, light lifting, power lifting, bodybuilding, strength training, high reps, low reps, controlled reps, explosive reps, doesn't matter, man. It's all the same. It's all to assuage the ego. My ego tells me to get stronger and become an explosive powerhouse. Your ego tells you to lift rinky dinky ass weights while imagining squeezing your muscles really hard in an effort to get swole. I'm pacifying my ego, you are pacifying your ego. It's all the fucking same. But it's annoying when you constantly hear these holier than thou sentiments being echoed across the internet. Well, I'm better than you because I managed to get jacked while deliberately keeping myself weaker than my grandmother. What? I'm better than you because I lift light weights slow instead of ever trying to lift anything heavy. It sounds real stupid when you say it out loud, doesn't it? So the vanity of an athlete or a strength enthusiast reveals itself primarily in terms of how they perform and what their body is capable of, right? The vanity of a bodybuilder or a hypertrophy enthusiast, on the other hand, reveals itself primarily in terms of how their body looks. But it's all the same. It's different ends, but it is the same means. The ego is what drives us towards these related but distinct goals. Everyone is lifting to appease their own ego. The exact manner in which it outwardly presents itself is going to depend on a billion different factors that have affected that individual over the course of their life. But the ego is what got the ball rolling and is what keeps it rolling. And that isn't a bad thing. It's actually a good thing. It's what drives us towards self-improvement. It's only bad when it becomes destructive. And it can become destructive for someone who lifts candy-ass light weights just as well as it can become destructive for somebody who lifts heavy weights. So cut the holier-than-thou attitude, right? If you choose not to lift heavy shit, that's cool, man. Kudos to you, bro, and good luck on your journey. But don't climb up somebody else's asshole and reprimand them just because heavy lifting is what they find fun and is what motivates them to actually get their ass into the gym and get better. It honestly reeks of insecurity, and at this point, it's kind of played out. We're all ego lifters. So shake hands, hug it out, and keep smashing the weights, bro.